and welcome, folks, to another edition of RSF Radio, an old school edition of RSF Radio. And also, just like, welcome back. We're fucking back. We're back online. Times were tough, but we are in it. And I have a very special guest friend of mine, Aurich. How you doing? You might know him from Ars Technica. You might know him from the internet writ large. Old school man gamer.
I am at large on the internet. This is an accurate statement.
But no, so this is something that, I mean, most every conversation I've had with you has been about older games and supporting older games and also supporting hardware. That's something that I feel like you in particular have a lot of more knowledge than I do. If you want to talk about like CPS2 boards or something like that, or like absolutely. A super gun, these are things I'm not aware of that maybe you could share with some people tonight. But I wanted to have you on this this comeback episode because one, I was in emergency mode for like the last 3 fucking weeks. It feels like. So like little backstory on this, because I think that you've, speaking of like man about the internet, you've actually like unplugged from the internet.
I have. It's actually been really nice. I'm mostly back now, but I have not been looking at Twitter. I cheated a little today.
Yeah, well, I pulled you back in. I threw that lasso and I pulled you back in for just a second.
No, it's good.
But like times for me have been a little bit on the rails right now. The computer broke entirely, but then like I got some mad help, specifically from users like Vivek and Meg. I'm realizing right now I have not attempted to say her last name right until right now. Chalinor. It probably has an affectation to it that I
promise you did that wrong.
I know I did. But those two really helped me out, and they were like, it was like an Apollo 11 situation of like, I know you have these parts. Are you trying this? What have you breadboarded the motherboard? I'm like, yes, and nothing's working. I've already jumped the leads with a screwdriver. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting nothing. Computers are weird, folks.
I hope you were wearing an Omega Speedmaster and it somehow saved your life.
So maybe I'm dumb for doing this, but I don't wear those, I don't know, it's like shock bracelets. What the fuck do you call them? The ones that you're supposed to wear around your wrist for like, so you don't short circuit
for static charge stuff.
Yeah, static to discharge.
I don't need.
Nah, I'm just like, no, I just touch a metal thing and I'm fine. My case is made of metal.
I've yet to kill anything with static shock. Not for lack of trying.
But speaking of killing things with static shock and perhaps being killed by static shock or electricity or discharging, let's say, a CRT, tell me about all games.
So I'm old. I don't hide my age. I was born in 77. I'm 41. So by FGC standards, I'm old. I'm young at heart.
You're of like the original class. Of
I am.
X-Men, you're the original. Class.
I will tell you a quick story just to establish my age. I played on one of the first Street Fighter II cabinets on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. God, I don't know. This is like February, March. It's been 91. I'd have to check the records. I was out at Santa Cruz at the Beach Boardwalk for a weekend for a friend's birthday. I was, 13, 14 years old. And we came across the World Warrior Cabinet. I mean, the OG original Street Fighter II. Mm-hmm. And we're like, holy shit, this thing's got 6 buttons. Like, this is amazing, right? We didn't know anything about it. No one did. And the best part of the story is we're just sitting there looking at it. We hadn't even put a quarter in it. And this guy who must have been the arcade manager or an owner some muckety muck at the arcade was giving these two people a tour. I mean, they're in like their business suits. And he comes over to the cabinet and he says something along the lines of, "Oh, we just got this in. Like, I think this is going to be a big hit." And, little did he know. And I think back in my memory, because, these old memories, you start fuzzing the details. I'm like, was this thing really brand new?
I've done that as well.
Yeah.
You make it a little bit sweeter. Just
it gets
a little
sweeter,
bit.
Right? I'll tell you how I know this thing was brand new. Like, and it's really simple. No one was playing it.
And I see.
There was a line on these things from then on out. I mean, once Street Fighter 2 was a thing, you didn't come across an empty one in the middle of the afternoon, right? I mean, this thing no one knew yet. We were mashing on it, and then some guy came up, and he had the knowledge. He knew how to throw a sonic boom. So, he beat our ass and then walked off. And we're sitting there like, how did he do that? Like, do you press two buttons at once? The notion of charging, like,
right,
completely foreign, right? Let alone, throwing a fireball. So yeah, no, I've been around. And I have, an affection for the arcade era very deep in my soul. I was an arcade rat. Anytime I would go anywhere and I'd see an arcade, I mean, please, can we go to the arcade? I don't have a quarter. Like, I wanted to be in there so badly. That was a magic place for me.
I remember those first moments with like any kind of fighting game when the first time that you realize that characters have special moves.
Oh yeah.
Is like,
well, we played Karate Champ. Karate Champ had the two joysticks, right?
That's true.
So an amazing amount of I mean, it's more than 6 buttons. It's 8 directions. This is amazing, right? That was kind of the OG fighting game. We thought that was great. No, that stuff was fabulous. Final Fight, it's kind of seen a little resurgence lately with the beat 'em up bundle and all that sort of stuff. Cody coming out
a little bit,
but that was my jam.
Streets of Rage 4.
Yes, there's a little throwback thing. I don't know how well those games are going to do. I feel like it's a genre whose time has passed, to be honest.
I'm with you as well. The things that, I mean, this isn't a beat 'em up podcast, but I will get into this because of things that modern beat 'em ups need. A good soundtrack, number one, is like, it has to have it. If I can't, like, listen, man, if I hear the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack at any time, I am transported to another place. I am in a different time. Something that I actually think that I don't necessarily know if it's a good game or a good beat 'em up, but did you play Double Dragon Neon?
No, I remember when it came out, but I'd never tried it.
So
I felt like it wouldn't. The lightning couldn't be recaptured for me.
Yeah, and that's fine. And it's not necessarily a great one of those games, but there are songs in that soundtrack that still are in my ear today that cannot escape. They're they're in there forever.
To tie this back to fighting games, since this is a fighting game podcast, shout out to Dino, who's got the best Twitter feed probably in the world for cool fighting game glitches and is a huge Streets of Rage fan. So if he's listening, man, I love his stuff. I don't know how he finds it, but it's just, like if there's something broken in a fighting game, he somehow has ferreted it out.
I love all the broken stuff. Fighting games aren't as broken as they used to be. And we're
going to talk about that.
Oh yeah, we should.
100%. So yeah, I love arcade games. I love the original stuff. I love old games. I can tell you, the first time I saw a Mortal Kombat cabinet, like you could hear it, like when you walked into the arcade, it had the subwoofer that sounded like nothing else, right? There was a magic there. There's nostalgia, there's rose-colored glasses, all that stuff. Like I'm not blind to that.
Right.
But one thing that was special back then is there was no pre-hype. There was no teaser trailers. You didn't know a year before it came out that it was coming.
Yeah.
You walk in and like there's a new game and no one knows how to play it yet.
Or someone could be switching out a board.
Button mashing, yeah. And you see your first fatality in the original Mortal Kombat and like your mind is just blown, right? And the tech gets traded at school. Maybe a month later it comes out in a magazine, right? It was secret knowledge that was kind of passed down. do I want to go back to those times? Like, no, I think it's awesome. I mean, some of my best fighting game friends are lab wizards.
Mm-hmm.
Like shout out to Javits and Automatic. Like I love those guys, and the fact that they're in there grinding in training mode and all that sort of stuff, it's really cool. But there's something special about back in the day being surprised, and I don't feel like we're surprised anymore.
Yeah,
and a little something lost there.
I think
I don't
so.
know how you recapture that. Maybe you can't.
Well, I think the ways that you recapture it are to include mechanics that allow for broken shit.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, games these days have mechanics that don't necessarily allow for broken shit. I mean, like UMVC did it a little bit. There's some broken shit there. Dragon Ball has some broken shit, but they also are like good about patching that stuff out. I don't know. It's just I want to see the glitches that turn into legitimate game mechanics, because we can like start talking about that, because there were like two big tournaments like since I've had time to record.
So MVC 2 and Co-op Cup, right?
Yeah. Bots 2 and and Co-op Coop Cup.
Here's what I would say about that, and this ties back to what you originally prompted me with. The old games, what was great about them is they existed in a state and they were what they were.
Right.
And, if something was broken, it stayed broken. And, they did some ROM revision stuff and they patched a few things later. But for the most part, it was what it was, and you worked with it for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. And, like Guile handcuffs, I think are probably one of the classic ones.
Yeah,
right?
Guile handcuffs.
It's a straight up glitch, right? But, combos as we know them were unintentional, right? I mean,
they were technically. We found the story goes, those were technically a glitch.
Yeah. There's a really great article that everybody should read that Polygon did called The Oral History of Street Fighter. Mm-hmm. And they break down the really wonderful bit about how the Rainbow ROMs, the hacked versions of Street Fighter that had all the weird shit, like switching characters in midair and throwing 5 fireballs at once and all this
press
crazy
select
stuff
to change character.
Yeah. But the thing that was amazing about it is it was faster, right? And the story goes that the US guy on the side of Street Fighter 2 went to play the Rainbow thing. He found a place with it, and he played it for like 4 hours. And he basically walked away thinking, man, this thing is garbage. It's so unbalanced. It's just broken in bad ways. Like, we don't have to worry about this. And he went back and played, whatever he had back at the office, Championship Edition. And he was like, fuck, this is underwater. It's so slow. He'd had 4 hours of crack, and like he couldn't go back.
He rang that bell, and you can't unring that bell.
Well, and and he basically had to fight with Japan to like create a hyper fighting, right? The turbo, they didn't want it. That was an American thing. I mean, there's a really interesting thing with Capcom US and Capcom Japan that I suspect, continues to this day. I don't really know. And they did try to unring that bell, because after hyper fighting, Super came out, and Super went back to the old speed.
Right. And
we weren't having it, man. That shit was garbage. Like, bad. We didn't like it at all. We're like, okay, you added 4 new characters, cool. Oh wait, this game is slow as hell. Let's go back and play Hyperfight. We didn't want to play it.
Right.
And it's actually interesting. By the time they dropped Super Turbo, and ST's like, it's a classic now, right? Everyone talks about it's a classic. We honestly didn't care. Like, in the arcade, it wasn't a big deal back then. In fact, we thought they were milking it. Like, how many versions of Street Fighter 2 are you going to do? Like, this is ridiculous, right? Yeah, World Warrior, Championship Edition, Hyper Fighting, Super. Like, we were kind of over it. But they did try to unring that bell, and it didn't work, right? You couldn't go back to the slow game. And they figured that out finally. But the beauty of that era and those games, and it continued all the way through to, Third Strike, for instance, is you worked with what you had. There weren't any patches. And in fact, they tried to patch Third Strike, right? There's a B version of the game that took out unblockables. And we refused to play it. We're like, no, Urian needs that shit, man.
Yeah, to be a character, That is Urian. That is
Oro needs
That's
it.
Oro.
Right.
That's Urian. Like, please leave that.
They're not top tier with that stuff. Please don't take it away.
Right. They're exciting with that stuff.
Yeah, it's fun, and
they're no good without it.
We'll talk about Co-op Cup and Third Strike's balance and all that stuff more, I'm sure. But just in the big picture, it's okay to let it rock.
Mm-hmm.
And, would Alpha 3 be better if you patched out Crouch Cancel Infinites? Probably they're boring. Like watching someone slowly get chipped to death for 40 seconds is not that hype. Mm-hmm. But when you're so reactionary and you patch things out, a week later, someone puts up some tech on Twitter and a week later they patch it out. You don't get a chance to figure out if it was actually broken. There might have been a counter to that. It might have led to something interesting, and you don't get that organic development.
Yeah.
And it's not just the developers, it's the players. We beg for nerfs, right?
Yeah.
Patch this shit. Like I don't know. I think we're soft. This is where I get my old man soft speech. I think we're soft about it.
So here's my counter to that.
Mm-hmm.
How many times were you in an arcade and said, "Hey, that's bullshit"?
Oh, all the time.
Because the only receiving end that you had was the opponent you were playing. You didn't have a red line to Capcom proper. All you had was your friend who just beat you. So you have to yell at them and say, "Hey, that tick throws are bullshit, by the way." Your jank throw.
Throws were illegal. You did not throw in Street Fighter 2. If you got thrown, it was like, well, I hope that was an accident.
It was the forbidden technique.
And
shout out to High Score Girl, by the way.
I haven't watched the anime yet. I know it's in there. I love that.
She's a Geef main. High Score Girl is a Geef main.
No, I don't know what you guys called it, on the East Coast or whatever, but on the West Coast, we had throwbacks. Like, if you got thrown, the guy who threw you was expected to hold still so you could run up and hit the button and throw him to make it even.
As if it was an accident. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Yeah, we had that.
Yeah, so, like, one of my favorite authors is William Gibson. It's the cyberpunk writer.
Mm-hmm.
And he likes to say the streets find a use for everything, right? And I feel like that's the way the arcade was. It's like if something was broken, like the streets had a solution. We had throwbacks, and if you didn't get the throwback, you might get punched in the mouth. Like there was an answer.
That was the solution.
That was the patch. Like, let me throw you or I'm going to hit you, right?
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is that, like, there's not... I mean, we can call it soft now, and I'm not... Let me just put it this way. I'm not opposed to calling it soft. I somewhat agree with you in saying that... Like,
it's tongue-in-cheek, but yes. Yeah,
it is just a way of calling it that, like, instead of solving it in the streets, we're picking up Twitter and going to the internet, and
we're too fast,
and we're believing that people are listening, whereas I don't necessarily know they're always listening. The receiver is not picked up on the other end always, but I agree with you though, and I feel like specifically with Street Fighter 5, the one thing that they kept that like really. This is the one thing that they did that really, well, there's many, but this is one of the things that they continually patched in and out of the game. Well, there's two things, but the one thing that got me was the Urian headbutt loops.
Right.
In that, as soon as one was discovered in the next patch, it was like, no, that one's out.
Yeah. Did you watch?
We would find another one, and then they'd go, "Oh well, you can't have that." And it's like, no, the setups for these headbutt loops are so highly specific that, like, outside of stun, they're basically not.
And they're hype. They're fun.
And they're hype. Yes, exactly. They're fun.
Why are you taking that shit away?
They require good execution. You can't just mash it out. Like,
I hate Urian. Like, I hate fighting Urian. He's a bullshit character, but don't take his shit away. Like,
sure,
it's on me, man. Like,
if you fucked up and got stunned, well, now you get styled on. You get styled upon, and that's fun. That's exciting.
5. Well, we can talk about 5 a lot. I'm sure we'll. But did you watch Smug trolling Chris T? Gets Chris T on his
I
stream?
did see that. Yeah,
and he's like, check your follows, man. If Ono's following you, like block him.
He can't know.
Yeah, because they're listening, and you see that people will be like, "Why are you posting that glitch? Like you're snitching, right? They're gonna patch it now."
Yeah. Make them look too good. They're gonna patch your character.
So back rewinding, and I think we're gonna jump back and forth in time here, right? I'm an old school arcade guy, and I've got a lot of hardware in my garage. I've got a lot of candy cabinets. I own a lot of boards. I've got a lot of Darksoft. Anybody who's like kind of a little deeper in the arcade scene knows who Darksoft is.
Let me just ask you specifically what those things are. Like, what exactly is a candy cab?
Let me break everything down. Like, if you don't know what I'm talking
just
about.
in case someone wants to get into it themselves.
100%.
If someone wants to make the mistake of buying,
it's a big mistake. Please don't do that. I also have a lot of pinball, and I will tell you right now.
Oh, that's the worst idea.
I tell people pinball is the worst hobby. They're heavy, they're expensive, they take up a lot of space, they break
all the time.
Pinball's like arcade stuff, but worse.
What pins you got though? I have to ask.
I've been downsizing. I used to have 11, and I'm down to 4. I might even go down to 2. I keep pushing the pins out because the arcade stuff takes over. And I try to fit a laser cutter in my garage. There's a whole lot.
I can understand that.
Right now, my pins are. I've got a Metallica limited edition.
Oh, sick.
I've got a pimped out Tron with fiber optic ramps. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
I have the Shadow, which is one of my all-time favorite games. 1994, Brian Eddy, really good game. Mm-hmm. And then I've got a really fun game that came out recently. I only got it last year, called Total Nuclear Annihilation. It's a kind of an indie game made by a company called Spooky, and my friend Scott Danassi designed it. And it's like a throwback game, single level, no ramps. It's like an early solid state.
Oh, okay.
But
weird.
But with like a modern soundtrack and like modern features and RGB lighting, like color changing lighting. It's the equivalent in pinball of the Street Fighter game I'm waiting for. It's like a throwback, but modern.
Right.
I'm waiting for like an old school style Street Fighter, but with modern features. Like that is in a pin what I want.
Before we get into, I kind of want to dig into pins a little bit. So sorry, folks. We're gonna talk a little bit about pinball because
I'm actually better known in the pinball community probably than the fighting game community.
Oh, really? So do you know about in Pittsburgh every year? There's the
Pinburgh, absolutely,
exactly. So like, I have like pretty much every pin, like pretty much every pin there is, at least comes through Pittsburgh every year.
Absolutely.
There's the Pinball Hall of Fame. It's all good stuff.
In Vegas?
Have you have you tried the Big Lebowski? It's like a newer one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good pin.
I was in on ordering it and backed out right before like all went to shit.
Oh, man.
I can tell you that I could spend an entire hour just telling you the saga of the Big Lebowski pinball.
Is there a sordid history of the Big Lebowski
very sordid,
pin?
Very ugly. It's not a happy ending. So yes, I have played it. I know it. I know the people who made it.
I am this close to derailing this podcast entirely to talk about the Big Lebowski pin for the next hour. I
will tell you. I will tell you offline because I promise you it is a long and ugly story.
Oh, that is fascinating.
Short version is very few of them exist in the wild because the company just like it went sour. It went bad.
Fair enough.
A lot of people lost money. It went bad. There is. Let me put it this way.
Candy cabs.
If you bring up something in pinball that I don't know about, I don't know, man. I'll PayPal you $100.
I don't know, man. Have you heard about this really good pin? It's called Black Knight. Heard about that one?
It was ripped off. that one of the designers left and went to Bali and ripped off Black Knight to make Flash Gordon, which is one of my all-time favorite games.
Right, we're done.
I used to have one, but I sold it to a friend.
I didn't realize that it just took that much to derail it. Of just
I sold
like
a lot of pinball machines to fit candy cabs.
No,
So,
I know I threw a softball out there, but
Here-
candy
here's-
cabs though. If someone's
here's-
interested in what a
yeah.
candy cab is,
So here's how an arcade cabinet works, right? An arcade cabinet is a box with a monitor and a power supply and buttons and joysticks and all this stuff. But the brain is the PCB. And that's the green, circuit board, printed circuit board. And so it's like your TV and your console, and then you put a PCB in it and the cabinet comes to life. And the classic kind of American cabinets that we think about, Rampage, Pac-Man, all that stuff, they were single-use cabinets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you turned your Pac-Man into a Gallagher or a Ms. Pac-Man, but the cabinet designs are sort of unique, right? Well, in Japan, we have what we call candy cabs. And the candy cab comes from the S&K cabs. The Neo candies. I have a Neo candy as part of my collection. That's where they call them. But they're cute. They're little. You sit down at them instead of standing. And unlike
they have a nice roundness to them.
Yeah, some of them. The old ones were more squared off, but the new
cool.
ones were more bulbous. And when I say new, I mean 90s. Right?
Motherfucker.
Right. And unlike these American cabs that you think about, they were generic. They were meant to have a game cycled through them without the exterior changing. Sometimes there'd be a little plastic marquee up above or an instruction strip you could swap out. So the bulk of my cabs are Astro Cities. And Astro City is a real classic candy cab made by Sega. I've got 3 Astro Cities, and then I've got a 4th one called a new Astro City. It's got a different speaker panel. Otherwise, it looks basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
So people would come over and they'd be like, "Oh, Astro City, I've never heard of that game." And you have to explain, like, no, it's the cabinet. Like the game inside changes, right?
It's not what you're used to of the nice artwork on the side.
Right. It's a different feel.
It's a different thing.
So I've got a row of candy cabs. I've got 5 cabs. So 2 Astro Cities, a Neo Candy, which is my Neo Geo cab, and then 2 more Astro Cities. And the way I have them set up is we've linked them so that one is the master and one is the slave. And so there's a PCB with the game in the master. Mm-hmm. And then we're basically stealing the video and audio signal off of it and running it to the cab next to it. And then I took out the control panels and replaced them with single player panels. So one person sits at one cab, one person sits at the cab next to them, and you see the same thing on both screens and you hear the same thing. And the second cab, we run the controls back to the first one, and it's the second player controls. Mm-hmm. So the 2 cabs become one.
You run side by sides?
Yeah, I run side by side. So if when we talk about Co-op Cup, they had candy cabs up on stage. Those were Blast Cities, which are a later version, same Sega, but later version of the cab. They had theirs back to back. And that's kind of the Japan standard, is back to back. You don't see your opponent while you're playing. You can't really hear their joysticks and their buttons.
You can't throw an elbow into them.
No, you can't. It's more of a competition style. I keep mine side by side because even when we're competing, we're friendly. We like talking to each other. We like talking tech. Like we
that's
like
American style.
I don't think it's an American style. So where this all comes from is from Family Fun Arcade. Mm-hmm. And Family Fun Arcade was run by my friend Ralph. And at Family Fun, that was basically like the Third Strike mecca for Southern California. And I would argue the Third Strike mecca for the United States. Absolutely. If anyone wants to dispute that, I'm happy to have that conversation. But I think you have to hold that. I think we owned that shit. I wasn't there for Family Fun. I'm from Northern California originally. I met Ralph later. Actually, I met Ralph through pinball. Ironically, some of my candy cabs come from him. I have some Family Fun cabs in my garage, but we became friends through pinball, not Street Fighter. But Ralph, as far as I know, pioneered that out here. Maybe someone else did it before him, but he had the cab side by side like that. Originally, American cabs, we call them Big Blues, the big blue Capcom cabs that Street Fighter would be in, and candy cabs. So I've got the candy cabs in a row. Mm-hmm. The first 2 on the left have CPS3 in them, and it's the Capcom Play System. I forget what the CPS stands for. I think it's something like that, Capcom Play System. So CPS1 is what Street Fighter 2 was on, and Final Fight,
Muscle Power,
Ghosts and Goblins.
I'm sorry, my soundboard was still active. I'm sorry, repeat that.
Are we good? Okay,
we're good.
Which part? Okay, CPS1, Street Fighter 2, right? CPS2 has ST, the Alpha games, Vampire Savior / Darkstalkers, depending on if you want the Japanese or American name.
Mm-hmm.
CPS3 is the system Third Strike is on, all the Street Fighter 3 games. Mm-hmm. In fact, there are only 6 games ever released for CPS3. The 3 Street Fighter 3s, New Gen, Second Impact, Third Strike, the 2 JoJo games, and Warzard / Red Earth. I forget what the...
Yeah, it's Red Earth.
Yeah,
it's the
Japanese and American names get kind of mixed up in my head sometimes. I'm used to the Japanese names just because Japan's kept everything alive. So when we talk about that stuff, we talk about this.
Which, if people don't know what Red Earth is, look that shit up. It's a fascinating game. It is a 1-player fighting game.
It's a 2-player. It's a 2-player game. It's a standard fighting game.
Can you play it 2-player?
Yeah, it's a standard fighting game, and some of the characters moved on to other things. You'll see them in places that you might not have known where they came from. Like Tessa shows up in Pocket Fighters /
I thought it was just a
Fighter Minimix.
A boss rush fighting.
No. You can play it like a regular fighting game.
Okay. Cool.
They were also in a Capcom Fighting Jam. If anyone knows about that bizarre abortion of a project. So that's my CPS3 cabs. Then I've got a Neo Geo cab. Mm-hmm. I love the Neo Geo games. I'm not a great Neo Geo player. Back in the day, I played them when they came out. Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, World Heroes. Yeah, I can play them, but I was never good at them. One of my players, shout out to Dave if he's listening. He works at Arcade Shock. I met him at Arcade Shock and invited him to my Tuesday nights. And I don't think it's a Neo Geo game he can't play. We load up Karnav's Revenge, and he's like, "Oh, let me show you how to do this loop," right? Like he knows everything about them. And then my last 2 cabs are CPS2, which, as I said, is those Alpha, ST, all those games. What I have, when I mentioned Darksoft, the people in the know are nodding already. Darksoft figured out how to make multi-boards for these arcade games. So you can load the entire library, like all the CPS2 games, you can load them. But it's running on the original hardware. There's no emulation involved. Mm-hmm. So this is like true school for the hardcore, but I've got a little LCD screen. I can page through my games, and I can reflash it with whatever I want. So I run a weekly.
The importance of that, I think, is what you're getting at, is that the latency and the
everything's
one-to-one
legit.
Feel is
everything's
there. Right there.
Like if you're like, oh, there's this weird bug like in the alpha, and like takes really precise frame timing, blah blah blah. Right. I'm like, you can do it here. I don't want to hear any of this like, oh, it's lagging, that's why I can't do it. Yeah, no, you just.
Or like sometimes in emulation when things aren't running at the correct frame rate,
speed.
Or the correct speed, it's like the frame skip or something, or things don't line up.
What usually happens in MAME, for instance, so if you emulate, you do things in MAME, right? Multiple arcade machine emulator. MAME has a lot of tricks. So like some games don't run at 60 frames a second. They actually run at like 59 frames a second.
Yeah.
But since we have a 60 hertz refresh rate and things have to refresh like on that clock, and you either, like you said, you either have to like drop frames or double frames, and you get these tearings and glitches. Or a lot of times what MAME does is speeds it up. So instead of from 59, it goes to 60. So it's just a little bit faster.
It's a little weirder. Weird things happen.
You might not notice it first, but when you get FGC level to people, doing these 1-frame links, they start noticing. So this is all
like Tominaga doing double Fukiage.
We talked about that. We'll definitely have to talk about that.
Yeah.
So this is the real thing. But the beauty of it is that I can rotate games really easily. within the family, within the CPS2 family. So I run a weekly every Tuesday night. People come over and play. It's kind of an invite only thing. If you're anywhere near Torrance and I ever get back on Twitter, like DM me or send me a message if you want to come by.
Might just be off forever. It's been nice for the last couple of weeks. Just maybe stay.
I miss it in some ways and I don't in others. We can talk about that. But I rotate the game. So, and I take requests. If people want to play Vampire Savior, like I'm happy to load Vampire Savior. I'm not a good Vampire Savior player. I play a little Sasquatch, but like badly. I'm not a good Vampire Savior player, but I love that game. So if there's anyone who wants to play it that night, I'm happy to put it on. If we're feeling like ST that night, like I'm happy to put it on. Lately, Alpha 2 has kind of been the game, which makes me happy. I ask people like, what do you want? I can do this. And Alpha 2 came out ahead and I love that. So I play Alpha 2 at least once a week. Like people come over and we play some Alpha 2.
That's a beloved game for good reasons.
Yeah, I like Alpha 3 for a lot of reasons too. But Alpha 2 it's the more pure successor to ST. It's kind of the basic Street Fighter with just a little extra.
Right.
It's got sprinkles on the frosting, but it's the basic cake, right? My CPS3 setup is Darksoft also. I could load New Generation or Second Impact or the JoJo's or whatever. There's a catch. The CPS2 switching games takes me, a minute, 45 seconds is fast. To switch CPS3 games is more like 45 minutes. There's a long write process that you can't skip. So if anyone wanted to play, New Generation for a gag, I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. Go load up 30th edition on my LCDs. Like I'm not switching the cap.
And the emulation's good there also.
It's fine. It's good enough. Yeah. Especially for the gag kind of stuff.
Right.
So that one stays stuck on Third Strike. It could technically change, but it doesn't.
Fair enough.
I think I've rotated it off once the entire time I've had the caps.
That's fair.
So we play Third Strike. We play Neo Geo stuff a little bit. Like
Sam Show 2, that's my jam. Sam
Show 2 is my jam. If I was going to put like one game on there, that would be the one. Like I actually have a real Neo Geo cart for that. Nice. I have a Darksoft. I do have a Darksoft multi in my Neo Geo cab also. So,
all right.
When Dave is over and it's like, hey, have you guys played, this, that, or the third? I can do it. I can load it for him. But Samurai Showdown 2, absolutely. I've got the card for that.
All right. So let's get into news though. Let's talk about current events because recently two big tournaments. I think we're going to focus on one over the other because one is Street Fighter and one is
I'm not a Marvel player. I watched it. I loved it. I'm happy to talk about it, but
I'll just say go watch that tournament. It's
godlike.
Really, like that's all you can do to describe it is that it's hype as fuck.
It's hype as fuck.
The rage quit from Executioner.
Here's what I'll say about it, right? I've met Yipes. I don't know him, but I love him. He's amazing. I got to meet him at an NLBC last time I was in New York. Like getting to see him like in his element like that. I mean, he was like a kid in a candy store, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about Co-op Cup because Co-op Cup is my jam. But the thing about that Marvel stuff is it's just guys in an apartment, man. I mean, it's my Tuesday night, but like with 7,000 people watching, right? It's just the homies. And the thing I would say about that is you don't need to stream to 7,000 people to do that. Like, get your people over and play some games. Like, there's nothing stopping you. Mm-hmm. I could talk about how Art had that Dreamcast hooked up, but shout out to Art. Man, that's my homie right there. Like, he's my retro brother on the East Coast. Like,
right.
Everything I do, he's probably one up to me. Like his streaming game is on point, his capture game's on point.
Yeah. His hardware game in general is on point.
He's the god. Like I love Art. That's my man right there. And yeah, like the joke we have with him is like, what kind of emulator you got there, Art? Because like his capture is so clean off of original hardware that it looks like emulation, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was great. I love that. And that I think was the grimy. That's the original, like, homies in the apartment playing games, right? That was Chinatown Fair, like, brought back to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's amazing in and of itself. But yeah, the other big event obviously is Co-op Cup. And Co-op Cup is probably the tournament I look forward to the most every single year now.
Me too. That is like the refresher. That is the start of the year. The unfortunate part is that with like family stuff that's going on and personal issues, I wasn't able to catch any of it live. So like, huge bummer to me on like a personal level. That I knew I was missing this thing that I continually say is like, I have this. This is the start of my year. Everything is good and pure, and here we are.
I watched a lot of it live. So we went down to San Diego and I unplugged. Mm-hmm. My phone was put away. You know, I deleted Twitter off my phone. I logged off everywhere. We went to San Diego. I put my phone away. I wasn't looking at the internet. And I told my wife, I'm like, you know, we're staying here till Saturday morning and Friday night. Like, there's something it's kind of important to me. She's like, that's not the same as logging on. Like, I don't, you know, you can stream it. That's not cheating. So I have my laptop and, you know, I watched it until I passed out. But even on the West Coast, I mean, it was even worse if you had been watching it live with the time difference. Like, I don't know when top 8 started, you know, it's going to 1 or 2 in the morning, right? I passed out. I saw a lot of, you know, quote unquote pools live, but I caught the actual top 8s later on the Anime Illuminati YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Which watch it on that. Watch it on the source.
Please. Yes, it's there. There's no reason to watch on anyone else's channel. If it doesn't say Anime Illuminati, you're looking at the wrong one.
Please make sure. This is like super important. And it has been important, but like the FGC is so small and insular that we have no reason to fuck this up. Don't fuck up, people. Just do it right, please.
And it matters because we're small, because you know, if the fake one gets 20,000 views and the real one only gets 5, like, you know, the real one could have got that 25 and it would have meant a lot to them. So yeah, please.
Well, that
Anime Illuminati.
That also matters, like in a business sense of like engagement and community engagement, which can lead to sponsorship money, which can lead to like conversations with people who can provide, like, what if anime, like, here's the terrible scenario is, let's say someone rips those vids and posts them and gets hundreds of thousands of views before the original gets to post any. Then maybe next year when they start courting sponsors to get a little bit of money, maybe they go to Red Bull and say, hey, and then Red Bull goes, well, you only got like,
show us your metrics. Yeah, what do you got?
To have 1,000 views on this and like 0 engagement. So like, why the fuck would I support this? And it's like, well, no, my engagement was stolen by. But
it matters.
It matters, folks. So please,
YouTube Anime Illuminati, look it up. It's not hard to find.
It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah,
and there's highlights.
How much have you been able to watch? Like, have you watched any of it?
I have watched most of first round, day 1 and day 2. A little bit of top 8 day 1 and the highlight reel.
All right, so I'm gonna end up spoiling things to you. So
that's fine. The story arc, not necessarily important. I want to see the good stuff.
It is, but it's not. It's not.
I know that like Dudley shows up in this tournament like quite a lot. Ibuki shows up.
Ibuki more than the Dudley story that's kind of cool is these guys came who are basically unknowns. You know, the English commentators, you know, a lot of which who live in Japan and play Third Strike all the time, you know, they know the scene. They're like, I don't know who these guys are. I've never heard of them. And yeah, they were tearing through people. And that's kind of the beauty of this arcade scene that's still alive in Japan is these killers, man, like they're just playing at their local arcade. Nothing's on stream. Nothing is sponsored. Nobody has any jerseys. And they roll out to your event and just murk you. And you're like, who is that masked man? Right. Yeah, it's great.
They roll up and take your money.
Basically. So Co-op Cup is just so great for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, it's the biggest Third Strike event of the year. And if you love Third Strike, like I love Third Strike, like that's great. Secondly, it's, I think, kind of the flag planted in the ground for old games and community games can still be relevant. There's no esports money. Nobody is bankrolling this stuff. You know, I think there was probably a little Red Bull money. I know their cooler was in the background, but
yeah, there's a little Red Bull money there, a little bit.
Someone's got to pay for this venue,
and that's fine. Like, guess what? That's fine. If Red Bull can
more power to them.
A little bit of their infinite money to Co-op Cup, then I'm fucking fine with that.
You know what? I think Red Bull is probably the most honest and authentic sponsorship brand out there. Like, you know, I'm sorry, like your Geico tournament doesn't mean shit to me, but like Red Bull, when they throw an event, they do it right. So, you know, shout out to them. No, Co-op Cup is legit. It's a community-driven event. The other thing that's just beautiful about, please, Matsuda's amazing. Yeah. The other thing that's beautiful about it is the format, the 5v5 teams, single elimination. And I maybe later I'll go into a long rant about why I think Street Fighter V really should adopt this format. But the thing that's so great about it is, you know, you put together a team. The first day is pre-Co-op Cup. And at pre-Co-op Cup, the teams are all the same character. So you get 5 Ibukis versus 5 Dudleys versus 5 Shans versus 5 Qs versus 5 Yuns versus 5 Chuns. I mean, whatever, right? Everybody gets represented, Sean included. I know there was a tweet going around like there's no Sean at Co-op Cup. There was no Sean's the second day when it kind of counted, which is fine. He's a purposefully nerfed character. Like, he's a bigger joke than Dan in a lot of ways.
He was strong in Second Impact.
He was broken in Second Impact, and they purposely nerfed him to the ground. I mean, they're on record saying we wanted a character that was handicapped so that like you could play your friends who weren't as good as you, or you could like show off by playing with a weak character. Like, they purposely made him suck. I don't agree with that, but it is what it is. This is the no patch era, right? Nothing's changing. There was a Sean team though the first day, and I know in the highlight reel that there's a Sean doing work, so it's in there. And then the second day it's 5v5, but you know, you play whoever. And the top tiers come out more the second day for obvious reasons.
Right.
But the characters you don't see as much are still in there. You know, you still see like a Remy. You know, last year, right? Piero, aka Lucifer, he OCV'd a team with Remy, and it's like the beauty of the format is you get variety, you get the Remys, etc. Both days, you know, pre-co-op and the second day. The other beauty of the format is single elimination, and that means that low tiers can shine because you don't have to beat them 10 times in a row. They don't have to figure you out. You know, they don't get a read on your gimmick. Like, it's like go hard or go home, right? Which is why I would love to see Street Fighter V adopt it. You're not going to see a lot of Laura's in tournament, you know, especially in season 4. She didn't get any buffs and everyone else did. Like, she's lower on the tier than she used to be. Tell me you don't want IDOM on your team though, right?
It's fair.
Yeah. So it's a really fun format. And Third Strike is kind of the anti-esports game. Like, if Third Strike was esports, it would actually be a really shitty game. And everything you see the stream monsters complain about would come true. You know, like, it'd be nothing but Chuns, Yuns, and Kentons, right? Or whatever people are bitching about. I think Mikoto's the current flavor to hate. But at Co-op Cup, it doesn't matter. You know, like, all right, you're not going to see a lot of 12s. It's not a great character.
Right.
But last year, before Kuroda's, unfortunate issues, you saw some pretty sick Q. You know, like, you see these characters. You saw Lucifer Piero do his thing with Remy. And it's hype. This year, you know, if you haven't finished top 8 of pre-co-op cup, I'm spoiling it. You know, like, these Ibukis ran wild.
Yeah, I saw some really tight Ibuki play.
Yeah, it came real close. Really close. Like, the Ibukis look great. And they made Ibuki look top tier.
They did.
She's not.
She's super not. She's super not. Her stuff is really hard to do.
She's honestly, I mean, you know, maybe you can call her mid-tier. I think tiers are kind of boring.
She's like below Dudley tier.
So here's how I would talk about Third Strike. Like, you can't avoid the tier conversation. right? Chun's top tier. There's just no getting around it. She is she unbalanced and broken? Yes. Is she unbeatable? No, she's not unbeatable. So like, but she's really strong. When she gets meter, she's just so dangerous. Yun, just slightly below her. And the only thing I'd say about Yun is he's super broken. And we'll talk more about that later when you want to ask me about my favorite combo.
Yeah, we will. We'll get into that.
But he takes work. Right. And I love seeing them put in that work.
And like, I love the meta of his meter usage, I think is interesting.
Yes.
When's the shoulder going to come? Is he going to cancel into the shoulder?
Yeah. And when someone has Ganesian, right, when he's super powered up, if you don't know Yun, his super just puts him into this super powered mode, right? And he goes into Ganesian, he gets all blue and flashy. And what you don't know if you don't follow Third Strike is everything he does while he's in Ganesian has the priority of like a super. Every move he makes is a special move. So like if you punch him and he punches you, he wins. So when he goes into Ganesian, everyone turtles. They're like, holy shit. Like no one wants to challenge him because if he gets that counter hit, right, he goes into his juggle and he blows you up. But when you do see someone challenge it, it's hype. I love it when someone activates Ganesian and the other guy's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, you don't scare me. And they go in there and they beat him. And that meter on Ganesian drains real fast. So like if you don't get in there and do your work, like it's over, right? So when someone challenges him, it's a lot of fun. If you're not
confirming into it or like getting your use out of it.
Yeah, and if you're an efficient Yun user, you're building meter at the end to reactivate. I think like a really solid Yun who's doing optimal combo finishers, it's like 9 seconds before they activate again. I mean, it's entirely broken. I'm not trying to argue it's not, but I still love it. Under that, I think most people agree is Ken. Ken is not broken at all, but he's really good. And he's got everything. Like anything there is in Third Strike that's like good, he's got it. You know, like low confirm into super, he's got that. Like 3 stocks of super, he's got that. You know, like he's solid. His fireball sucks, but in Third Strike, that's not that important.
Yeah.
And then under that, like those are the kind of everyone I think agrees top 3. Under that, I think it just gets wide open, man. Like if it's Mikoto, is it Dudley? Like how are you going to argue the two?
Yeah.
They're both.
That's why you
put
everything else into like you put a lot of characters into B tier.
Or I would argue it's S plus. A plus,
sure,
and then a lot of A tiers. Don't tell me Dudley's not a really good character. I play Dudley. He's really good.
He has good stuff. He has good stuff about him.
Dirty.
Is he top tier?
So dirty.
Absolutely not.
He's really close. He's got high-low mix-ups, high damage, nasty combos. Like he's so good.
Does Mikoto have strong stuff? Absolutely. Is she top tier? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Does Tominaga make her look like a top tier character? Absolutely, he does.
But he's also doing stuff that's like incredibly difficult, and I think that I know I've been off Twitter and I missed whatever 801 Strider said. I mean, I heard him getting shouted out. Like I realized he was talking trash about Mikoto being broken and why no one complains about her, and they complain about 5, whatever, right? The difference is. He's a broken character specialist, right? Abel, Mika, Laura, G, like he plays robbery characters, right? The difference is G's robbery, and I'm a Laura player. I'm happy to admit Laura's robbery. Like it's not that hard, like you guess wrong twice, and like I won, but it's not because I'm a particularly skilled player. It's because you flipped your coin wrong.
Right. You knew.
Mikoto, it's similar. I mean, she's got a touch of death, right? I mean, she does, but it's not easy. Okay.
It's extremely difficult.
It's a really difficult combo with either 1 or 2 Kara cancels, depending on which character you're playing, because you have to know the specific combo to use against the specific character. Right.
And more importantly to that, it's a blind car cancel.
Yes. So here's how it works, right? And I don't play Mikoto, so if I mess up something here, like someone can call me out. But so she grabs you, right? Because she's got her little nasty choke that everyone loves talking about, and she goes from that into her fierce. She cancels into Super R2, and we'll talk about this in a minute because I actually think it's really fascinating. That Super Art can only be used from the correct corner. Okay. Then she has to dash. Then she has to do a Kara cancel DP, okay, which is the Fukiage when she does the little up punch. That's a dragon punch motion. Okay, so you got to Kara cancel that. Then you got to dash again. And while you're doing that, you're down below and the screen is shifted up high to show the character that you've hit up in the air. So your visual reference gets lost. Mm-hmm. And then you got to do another Fukiage. And depending on the character you're doing against, you might have to Kara cancel that also. Mm-hmm. After a dash. I mean, I can't do it. I'll tell you that.
You have to do that, specifically to do that when your character is off screen. You have to know exactly the frame, like the frame timing, the frame perfect timing of when I think
you have 2 frames to do it, and I think that there was some tech discovered. Like you couldn't originally do it against Chun well, and someone discovered some tech. And I think that they doubled it. So instead of like 1 to 2 frames, you get like 3 to 4 frames.
Okay.
But it's hard.
Yeah.
And when you see it, it's hype. And you know what? Most people are going to drop it. So it's like, is it broken? Yes.
Most people don't even choose that super art in certain in certain matchups because they know it's already too hard. They're not even going to try.
It's hard. And the thing I was alluding to earlier, you can only do it from the corner. And when I say from the corner, I mean the wrong corner, meaning you got cornered, right? So
have to be cornered.
You get this beautiful thing. So like Dudley versus Mikoto has got one of the coolest dynamics, in my opinion, of all of Street Fighter. Because if that Mikoto is rocking Super Art 2, which is the touch of death we're just talking about,
right?
She wants to be backed into the corner to be able to pull that off. Well, Dudley wants to back you into that corner because he's a mix-up monster. He would love nothing more to put you in that corner and just stick you into high-low mix-ups and juggle you to death.
He's in fact really good at putting you in the corner.
He's a dangerous character when you get cornered. It's why his bad matchups are the ones who can get out. So like Akuma Goki is a bad matchup for Dudley because his teleport's actually good in third strike. Mm-hmm. So it sucks. You corner him and he teleports out, right? It's a rough matchup for Dudley. So Mikoto is basically backing into that corner to go for this sort of Hail Mary touch of death against a character that would love nothing more to put you in that corner and just murder you. And I can't think of another dynamic in Street Fighter that is quite like that.
Where it's two cannons, not glass cannons, 2 cannons just pointed at each other.
Like just, who's going to pull that trigger first and which barrel's going to get blown off. It's great. The thing about Third Strike that is so beautiful, and I think a lot of people haven't really played it, and they're quick to assume like, oh, well, like Chun is broken, or Ken is broken, Yun sucks, whatever. It just has a lot of creativity, a lot of expressiveness. It has all these things that we complain that 5 doesn't have, because you can play your character in your own way. There's so many approaches. I mean, the parry, for all the things that parry breaks, it also opens like whole horizons.
Right.
The super art you pick, if Mikoto doesn't pick super art 2, she's an entirely different character. You're not on super art 2. You don't want to go back to that corner.
Right. You're no longer a threat. You don't want to escape that because her movement is very particular. She needs her backdash to create space. You can't.
Her walk speed is incredibly slow.
Yeah, she's
her
not
dash
bulldog out of the corner.
Super important. No, she doesn't have options if she doesn't have that like touch of death in her pocket. Mm-hmm. Ryu, again, not a top tier character, not even a high tier character, just a really solid character. If you play Denjin Ryu, you're playing an entirely different Ryu than if you picked a different super art. Denjin Ryu is like its own thing. and it's a beautiful thing, and I love watching Denjin Ryu.
So
but
much
not
so
every
that you can just Google Denjin Ryu and get Third Strike video. Actually, I'm going to try that right now. I'll open up an incognito tab just so it's not.
If you missed Co-op Cup or you're not a big Third Strike follower, you might have seen Third Strike at its official Capcom event. What was that, Canada Cup, where they did that, right?
Yes.
And $7,000 prize pool, I think, and got some people to come out, and we had a Denjin Ryu mirror match grand final, which is like, holy shit! I've never seen that. And if it's happened before, I missed it. Really fun. Denjin Ryu is like, it's a thing. It's like,
oh man, it's Denjin Ryu. If you put that into Google, it is the fourth link down, where you get the correct Denjin Ryu.
I can't think of another game where picking an option like that fundamentally changes your play that much. I mean, maybe CVS2 with the grooves.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't a big CVS2 player. I don't feel like I'm a good enough authority there.
Yeah, I would say so. But
that's a kind of a weird edge case.
That also has like a team mechanic of, if you build a team with a certain groove, it matters more.
Well, and roll canceling.
Roll canceling
thing.
And only some have roll canceling, but also you can build a team without that. That is fine as well.
Third Strike is special. Is it a balanced game? No. It is not a balanced game. Is it a broken game? Yes, in a lot of different ways. Is there a lot of bullshit in it? Absolutely. Is it fun? Oh my God, it's so fun. And here's what I would tell people, because we get beginners come over, and I'm not a great Third Strike player. Like, don't even get me wrong. Like, I can hold my own on my Tuesday nights, but like, I'm not a great player. But we get people come who've never played before. Actually, Born Free came through. Mark, if Mark is listening, shout out to Mark. And
yeah, I was talking to you about that.
Mark was a bit of a skeptic. Like, he was a bit of a Third Strike skeptic. I think he'll allow that I'm fair saying that. And he sat down the cabs and picked Goki, because I run the Japanese ROM, so he played Akuma, right? And we just, and usually we've got, we play first to twos, or if there's a lot of people, it's one and done, you get up. We just let him sit there for, an hour or two, just playing, just trying to teach him the game. And I think he got a little hooked.
Well, I think like weeks after, he specifically got lessons from Automatic on how to play.
That's right.
That's on his YouTube channel. Check that out.
Yeah. So that's from him hanging out in my garage. The thing about Third Strike, and the reason why I would encourage people to just try it, don't hop online, okay, on your day one and get bodied by some dude who's been playing Fightcade for 10 years.
You'll get fucked up. You'll have no idea why. You'll get a random hit because the person you're playing expects you to have a certain cadence about the way that you play, and then it's just like, well, what the fuck?
But you're going to lose, and it's going to be frustrating.
Right.
And you know what? It should be that way, to be honest.
Correct.
When you play a fighting game against someone who's more experienced and better than you should get your ass handed to you. And if you're not, there's something wrong with the game. and modern games are fighting that, and I don't like it. But what I would really encourage people to do is get your buddy. You guys play Street Fighter 5 together, whatever. Any game you play, it doesn't have to even be Street Fighter, but you play 5, that's the one everyone plays now. Get 30th collection, it's not expensive. If you got a PC, just emulate it, I don't care. Just play the game. Two people who have no idea what they're doing playing each other will be evenly matched, right? And that's sort of the universal. Just play it for an hour. I promise you will realize something just feels good about it. Just the movement. Just walking back and forth feels good.
It's beautiful. It's also beautiful to look at.
It's a beautiful game, the animation, all that stuff. But it's the feel that really matters. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing quite like it. I really think you have to experience it. It's kind of a meme-y game, right? People talk about it.
Of course, it's better to have someone there who knows what the fuck they're talking about to kind of walk you through.
If you got a friend who plays it. But if you don't have that, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just play it like it was a regular Street Fighter. Don't even worry about parrying. Just like play. In fact, definitely don't worry about parrying. The parrying is like,
That comes with time. That's like,
it's overhyped. Like it's a funny thing.
yeah.
If you watched Co-op Cup, like you saw some sick parries. The other thing you might have noticed is there were a lot of matches that didn't have any, or one or two.
I loved how, I forget which matchup it was. It was the Akuma with no health versus the Chun-Li.
Yeah.
It was in the highlight, and you hear the Japanese commentator say, Justin Wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go, Justin. Right? Let's go, Justin.
And it's like a random super didn't even happen. And it's just like the Akuma got a really good touch on a blow up Tatsu. It was like fucking awesome.
RX, I think, had a really great like Magic Pixel comeback.
Yeah.
I know he's a god like Urian. The thing about the parry that is so great, and moment 37, obviously everybody knows it, right? Is you earn your comebacks with it. It's not like popping V trigger. I get frustrated. Like I'm playing a G, and I've got 3/4 of my life left. I've knocked him down to nothing. He gets V trigger, and like I guess wrong twice, and I lose because he just turned on his thing and bulldozed me back. Is he happy? I don't know. I mean, maybe he's cackling, or maybe he feels nothing. Because I know when I do that to people, a lot of times I feel nothing. It doesn't even feel good. Like I won, it doesn't even feel good. The parry is great because when you see that kind of a moment 37 thing, it's earned. It's not automatic.
Well, and we should get into this a little bit later, but I feel like we got to kind of sunset on Third Strike. We've gushed over it a little bit too much.
Here's the last thing I would say about Third Strike.
In closing,
grand finals of the actual thing, it comes down to Ken versus Ryu. And it's like, even in Third Strike, man, these classic things happen. I mean, you can't front on Ken versus Ryu.
Oh man, that's
and
actually,
the Ken player.
I actually can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, the Ken player is Deshikin, and I feel like Deshikin is a name that maybe some people don't know, and it turns out you might, because he wins. It came down to the two anchors, like the last guys on the team play it out. I think the Ryu is Vanao, a really good Denjin Ryu player, and Deshikin wins. And in the speech afterwards, the translator, I thought he was trolling at first, but apparently it's legit. He says he's going to stop playing Third Strike and could become a Street Fighter V player. And at first, like I was like, "Are you trolling me?" But I think he really is.
I thought I heard that. That. That's funny.
I'm going to read you something for a moment. I put this in our little document. Okay.
Yeah.
And rather than link, no one's going to read it if I link it. I'm just going to read it out loud real quick.
It will also be linked in the show notes.
Okay. So this is Daigo. Okay. Daigo says, I've been playing fighting games ever since I was 14 years old, and I've seen a lot throughout. One thing I really thought was incredible or extremely talented was one person, without a doubt. I'm really interested in what it'd be like if this person gets serious. Deshikin. When I played him, he left a big impact on me. I'd think, you can counter that? You can react to that? Did you see that? He's a really exceptional player. Never seen anything like it in another game. All his stats are S rank. Reaction time, skill, mentality, world top class. Anyway, this guy's matches are fast. He thinks much faster than a normal person. Like 99% of people can't keep up with him. He's like a guy with amazing speed that never runs out of fuel. Clearly is something we don't. And this part is what I love. This is the last little bit. He says, one thing that made me comfortable, I'm glad this guy doesn't live in Tokyo. That's how amazing I felt his genius to be. I still believe that to this day. I think if he was born and raised in Tokyo, fighting game history would have been completely different. So this is the last guy up, and apparently he's going to play Street Fighter V now. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's glowing praise from Daigo, who can say with some authority that at the time where he was bodying people in Street Fighter 2 or Alpha, then like things could have been different.
Yeah. And the funny thing about Daigo is he's not even that amazing of a Third Strike player. Like everyone knows Moment 37 because this is like big thing.
I love this.
I think a lot of people don't know it wasn't grand finals.
I love this factoid. Yeah.
Right?
A lot of people can say that moment, man, moment 37, Daigo, he's the best third strike player. No, he didn't win that tournament, dog.
No. He beat Justin and went on to play KO, who beat him, by the way, for a second year in a row.
Yeah. That's like like a lot of people think that that's a grand finals match.
No,
but
KO beat him with Yun, and in fact, KO, I don't know the story. KO was a Yun player. I don't know if he got bored playing Ganesian all the time or wanted a bigger challenge, but he switched. He's a Yun player. I mean, a Yang player now.
Yeah.
He plays the other twin, who's really good, but not as broken as Yun. Anyway, Co-op Cup, amazing. I've watched hours and hours and hours of Third Strike. I'm really hype off it. What did you want to transition into?
Well, I think that our conversation kind of naturally leads into what is going on with 5 currently, and perhaps what can be changed in 5. Yeah. Because this video was posted earlier. Was it yesterday? When the fuck was this posted? On the 8th. So today is currently the 10th. So 2 days ago.
Couple days ago. Yeah.
By YouTube channel The Battle Lounge. Not something that I have heard of, but it came across our Street Fighter, and I was like, well, let's dig in. The thing about it is that I listened to the first minute of this video and I clocked out, and I was like, man, whatever. Yeah. Like, when sometimes here's a thing in the fighting game community that I would encourage everyone to check their own biases, because I had to do this myself. As soon as you hear someone speak in a vernacular that is not common, or say something that is out of line with what you know historically, then I check out. Yeah. And that happens in this video a couple of times, but it's like he's earnest about it, but also it's not.
He, I think, was trying too hard to open the video with saying, I'm a fan of Street Fighter V, so when I criticize it, don't put me in your hater bucket. I'm not a hater. Like, I like this game, but I have some thoughts on it. And he went a little too hard on that aspect of it. And he's like, I love Street Fighter V. It's got the most like godlike neutral ever. And you're like, wait, what?
Like, as soon as I was like,
hold on. Wait till he gets to the stuff.
Hold the fuck up. Excuse me.
Yeah. He made a couple of mistakes in the video. When he talked about Guilty Gear, I've got a friend who's a Guilty Gear player, and Michael, if you're listening, I'm gonna put you on blast here. He got kind of mad at the Guilty Gear part. He's like, this guy doesn't know anything about Guilty Gear. I'm like, it turns out actually he's been playing Guilty Gear for 15 years. He knows a lot about it, but he didn't do himself any favors the way he talked about it. He makes some things some mistakes that I think are easy to latch onto. I would encourage
there are generalizations made in this video that I think were made with the goal of brevity. Yeah. Whereas later on in the video, he even states himself of like, hey, like, I know I could get into this way more. Yeah. But this isn't a video about Guilty Gear.
It's not. So when I don't talk about Guilty Gear's defense, it's not because I'm not aware that Guilty Gear has defense, right? Yeah. I would. Yeah, I would encourage people to ignore those sidetracks and pay attention to what he talked about, because it's so real. I just felt what he was saying so much when he talks about pushback, which is not something that I feel like is brought up that much.
Nobody talks about it. It's like super important. Pushback on hit and on block is so important, and like where it leaves you in relation to your own opponent is like super important in terms of your own pressure, like the decisions that you make, the decisions that are available to you to make are like hugely impact the game, which is why when the last patch dropped and they changed a whole bunch of pushback, I was like, yo, we're playing a fucking different game. Overnight, Street Fighter V became a different game based on pushback and just those little fudges alone. I was like,
It needed more.
It's kind of fucked up, right?
More pushback.
Not sure. Yeah, that's the whole other end of this conversation of like, what has pushback?
Here's my transition, right?
Explain it a little.
Here's my transition. My transition is I just spent days watching hours and hours of very high level Third Strike, just binge watching. I was like Netflix binge watching Third Strike, going through all this Co-op Cup, right? Because These were 2 full days of nothing but, and there's no fluff, right? And then, I haven't really been checking Twitter. I'm not keeping up with things, but I saw some people post some Street Fighter V videos. I know that the Topanga thing just happened and like Birdie's top tier now. I don't know. I haven't been keeping up, right? And I'm watching these matches, and it's like I'm seeing them through the lens of just I've only been playing really Third Strike and Alpha 2. Mm-hmm. I've only been watching Third Strike. I haven't been playing any 5 since like 2018, right? And it's like, holy shit, like it's Street Fighter. It's obviously Street Fighter. And yet there's something so fundamentally different. And I was having trouble figuring out why it just didn't feel right to me. And then I watched this video and I realized, oh, this is it. He articulated that wrong feeling. In Third Strike, it's got a lot of stuff on paper that is similar to 5. Priority normals, right? That's a big one. Priority normals. Sort of introduced in Alpha 3 too, but sort of. Really, it's a Third Strike thing. 5 has them. 5 doesn't have invincible DPs without EX meter for the most part. Goki's a weird exception. 5 doesn't have that. Like, there's a lot of things that are like, they feel sort of similar, right? But they're not. And the pushback is such a huge part of it. In Third Strike, you can hit someone and they can block it. And you can end up like half the screen away from them. Mm-hmm. Like they blocked it and neutral is reset. There's no burst. There's no V reversal. Like that was the end of your turn. And it's the end of your turn.
It is something where people can look at Street Fighter V on paper and they look at, well, the numbers, he's -4, so you can jab. Yeah. You can jab at the end of that. And you could look at that same thing in Third Strike and say, well, this move is -4, so what if you jabbed? It's like, brother, you're in a different county. Like,
you don't have a move that will reach them.
Your
do whatever you
jab
want.
doesn't do piss all. Like that's the reason why 12 can only get a crouching leg hit punish on some things. Like
12, the character wasn't finished. This is actually, I wrote a rant about this on Twitter. If I wasn't on Twitter break, I'd dig it up, right? So someone feel free to troll through my account. I actually wrote this rant about why I think Street Fighter V is a terrible game for new players. To which my favorite part of my rant, it's like a 4 or 5 tweets in a row of all these things I think are terrible for new players. And someone responded like, wow, like, so what game would you recommend for new players? I'm like, no, Street Fighter V. It's still the best one.
Yeah. The thing is, so for anyone listening right now who is getting like, hey, these guys don't talk bad on Street Fighter V, it is coming from a position of us thinking that Street Fighter V is or at least seeing how Street Fighter V could be a really good game. Like,
I've been playing since the beta. Great game. I've taken a little. When I say I haven't played since 2018, I mean like December, 28th or whatever. Like it's been a few weeks. I play. I get frustrated sometimes and take a month off, and then I always come back to it. Like I'm a 5 player. I am not a hater of the game, but it frustrates me a lot in a lot of ways, and I like talking about it. The thing though that kills me about the game, maybe more than anything else, and it was touched on in this video, and we were just talking about it now. It's the frame data. In Third Strike, in Alpha 2, I'm not going to talk about 4 because 4 is sort of a different case, but let's talk about, the old school games we've been talking about. Frame data exists, right? Moves are plus or minus on block, and it matters. And in Third Strike, like, it's good to know some of it, and, especially if you're on a lab or whatever. But you can play without knowing. It's kind of obvious. There's some situations where you're not sure if it's your turn and you might want to, hit a wiki and try and figure out like Yang's wrecking me in the corner and I don't know where my opening is. Like, okay, fine. Lab that, look it up. Like it's not like there's no situations where it matters. But you can basically play blind. If you're a Street Fighter player, but you've never played Third Strike, we can sit down and play. You're going to feel pretty comfortable for the most part, as long as we're avoiding like some of the weird, the weird edgy shit, right? Mm-hmm. But just like normals in neutral, you're going to feel pretty comfortable. In 5, you basically need an Excel spreadsheet because it is so important to know if it's your turn or not. And for the most part, the game doesn't tell you. I mean, this is what we're talking about 5 versus Third Strike. What in Third Strike, you block that normal, they get pushed back half a screen length. And like you said, doesn't matter if you hit jab or not. Like the turn's over, neutrals reset, start over. 5 doesn't have that for the most part. You are glued in their face, just frame trapping them to death. And if you don't know the correct time to push a button and which button is fast enough, you're kind of screwed. You're just going to get beat on. And it's relentless. You're just in their face, they're in your face, and it's just, I
think a good practical example for this is that something that I very specifically remember at the release of Street Fighter V, and I think you could even go back on our Street Fighter and look at these types of posts, but something that continually came in was, I don't know what to do against Rashid. Specifically Rashid.
Yeah.
And
season 1 Rashid, yeah.
And if season 1 Rashid. And it's like, if you know anything about that character, if you didn't know about that character and he was just continually doing special attacks that move him forward, normal attacks that move him forward, a lot of forward moving stuff that puts him right next to you, he doesn't have the advantage in those situations, but a newer player isn't going to know that, isn't going to know.
But it feels like it.
It feels like it.
The feel, you've got to get your spreadsheet out.
Yeah.
And this was part of my new player rant. I have serious disadvantage. Right. And once you get out of beginner level, it's fairly essential. And every time they patch the game, which by Capcom standards is pretty often, we're not in NRS land, but their patches are somewhat frequent,
6 months ish,
a couple times a year, right? Yeah, they change it sometimes a lot. I mean, talk about Rashid, like in season 3, like his data went all over the map. He started the season at one thing, and then we had that weird patch, a couple months in, and they suddenly realized that apparently they'd screwed up, and like this thing that was +2 is now -5. And you're like, wait, what? So you got to know, you got to look it up. You got to have an app on your phone. You got to like pull out your computer. You got to do your homework. And that's my bitch, is it feels like homework. It's not interesting to me. It's not, I'm not a lab dude. I just like to play. I play by feel. I'm an old school guy. I'm stubborn and in my ways. I don't spend hours in training mode. It's just not who I am. I like to just play.
You're not a mathematician.
And, it's like, I know how to read frame data. I understand how a frame trap works. Like I'm a seasoned Street Fighter player. Like,
but you're also playing so many games that all of that data is almost why a human brain cannot contain all that data.
And I'm 41 with a full-time career, a teenager, another kid who's about to be a teenager. I've got like a life.
You've got pinball machines that have broken parts in them.
Jesus, do I? And I don't have a ton of time. So when I have time to play, I've got my, my hour a day or whatever it is. I don't want to be in the lab. I want to be playing. Mm-hmm. Some people enjoy being in the lab. I go in the lab because I'm frustrated enough to be like, fine, like, how do I beat this shit?
Which is a fine way to approach games if you want fighting games, if you just want to play fighting games.
Sure. Yeah, you shouldn't have to be a lab monster. You
shouldn't have to feel the pressure to like be or strive to be a competitive top player. That's also not like these games can be just be enjoyed is another thing about them.
I want to be the guy in the room who can take some games off of you. I don't want to be the guy who never wins anything.
Sure.
I don't need to be the top player in the room. You know what I mean? Like, I just need to win some matches.
Sure.
And the really good guy, like, if I can take a round off him, or it takes me, 20 games to finally beat him, fine, I'm good with that. So, it's not like I don't practice, but I don't practice. And in other games, I can get away with that. In 5, it's hard, because the new patch comes out, the frame data has changed, and I'm in the corner, and I've got that Rashid on me, and I don't know when I can push a button.
Or specifically, pushback was changed.
Yeah.
Or maybe not changed enough in some people's opinion.
And 5's a game where you push a button when you weren't supposed to. You may have just lost.
Right.
You got crush counter, whatever.
The take the throw meme is a meme because there are situations where if you, for a split second, believe that your opponent is walking forward to tick throw you, but instead they walk forward and counter hit jab into medium, into confirm, into V-trigger cancel, into death, is an issue.
And it's not that hard. I mean, you describe, we're not talking about some Mikoto, Kara cancel combo there, right? We're talking about some pretty easy stuff that you don't even have to really hit the lab to be able to do.
Yeah, it's not a blind Kara cancel that you have to do after a dash.
No, they hand a lot of it to you on a platter. And I'm fine. The buffer and all this stuff, like I don't even care. I don't care how difficult the execution is.
Right. Accessibility into getting to the point where players can do mid to top tier, top level stuff is another conversation. It's another conversation.
It is. But what I care about the depth more than the one frame links, more than the executions, I care about the mental game.
Right.
And, like when we talk about footsies and neutral and all that stuff, what we're really, really talking about is that dance, the mental game, right? You and those two players going back and forth. Mm-hmm. And 5 shortcuts, a lot of that puts you into these, frame trap pressure situations. And if you don't do your homework, you can be really stuck. And I think that's frustrating to new players. It's not friendly to new players.
It's uncomfortable.
I don't really think it's fun for good players, though. Like who wants to spend time, in Excel?
The thing about this particular game that I feel like is extremely mentally tasking because the space of which this game is won or lost is so close. It's the difference of like 1 or 2 frames very close of where you tried to make a decision of, well, should I press a button in this gap or not? Because if I continue to block or delay backdash or take a short step, this is why there was that whole write-up of Daigo saying the strongest thing you can do defensively, or it was Fudo saying the strongest thing that you can do defensively is block, slight walk backwards, block again.
Yeah.
Because that extra range matters so much.
I guess I would just ask that, like, is that fun? I'm not sure that's fun.
Okay.
And to bring this full circle with these old games and these broken games, are they balanced? No. Is Street Fighter V a balanced game in season 4? Yeah, I think that they made a lot of thoughtful changes. They didn't make the changes I wanted, but I think the changes they made were very thoughtful. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like anybody got over nerfed. Were some nerfs unnecessary? Like the Ken players are going to say yes, but like there weren't any heavy-handed nerfs, and a lot of buffs. Did Laura get any buffs? No, god damn it. But it's really even. I think it's a very balanced game. I suspect we're going to see a lot of character variety. Like that's all good.
And like you said, I feel like it's one of those games where if you are just up against a 5v5 and you have to just win one round, you just have to win two games. You just win those two rounds.
In a broken games are hype when it's that short.
Right.
They're less hype in longer sets because the reality of the bullshit starts to set in.
Yeah.
They're also hype in these short sets because lower tier characters who have a little bit of garbage, like Laura is like just my go-to example since I play Laura. Mm-hmm. She's not a character you saw in tournament. She's just not, because she's too guess heavy. Her damage output is very strong. She can rob you to death, but it takes a lot of guesses to do that. And in a tournament setting, in a guess-heavy game, adding another layer of guessing on top of that, it's too much. You're going to crap out. Like, no one wants to roll the dice.
Geef was not strong in the previous season.
Yeah. Well, grapplers in general aren't. Mika cheats a little bit because she almost doesn't play like a grappler in some ways.
No, just the threat of a command grab is somewhat stronger for her than the actual command grab itself.
Yeah, I mean, they nerfed command grab. You whiff a command grab now, like you can get a sandwich and then come back and punish. I think balance is fine.
Yeah,
balance is good. Character variety is good. I'm for that. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think fun is more important than balance.
So the one thing,
ideally, both, right?
The one thing about this particular video that I think is omitted, that you know, the suggestions are made, have more pushback, and this was something that I've been saying for a long time, is have recovery frames increased on further pokes, where it's like the ability to whiff punish is there.
Whiff punishing would be so much better.
Which they did on a couple of normals. Like
it's getting there.
Screaming into a bullhorn about Abigail's stand a hard punch, where the window to whiff punish it was 5 frames. It had an extended hurt box of 5 frames after the active frame, where you had to already be trying to whiff punish it on a normal that could also be held if he was in V-trigger. So like trying to whiff punish that shit was an impossibility. Now you can do it.
They dropped the input lag a frame. It's getting there. Footsie's
getting there.
Yeah.
It's getting there. Which then something, again, that is not covered in this video that you have to take with a grain of salt is that there's the priority system mixed with the crush counter system. Yeah. And specifically in the neutral, some characters are rewarded a lot more than others for getting that random crush counter in the neutral. So it's just like something to take in and consider when, or if you watch this video, and kind of, you know, it's just another thing to look at. That,
I'll add my pet peeve to it. The one thing I really wish they would borrow from Third Strike, because I think it makes a big difference. In Third Strike, you have 6 frames of throw and vulnerability on Wake Up.
Yeah.
So your fast normals beat throws, right? Now, Third Strike's tricky because there's Wake Up parry, there's universal overheads. Like the Wake Up and the Oki game is different, granted. But you don't have to worry about being thrown as you're getting up. And in like 5,
as much,
it sucks.
Say.
As much, they have to delay their throw.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. So you have an option in there. You know, Wake Up normals will beat the throw. Right.
But that's also like a whole other meta of, are they trying to parry on Wake Up, or are they, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, no, Wake Up parry. And like I said, the universal overhead changes it. I mean, Bison in 5, Dictator doesn't have an overhead, right? I mean, like you can block low on him all day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, give him a universal overhead. It's a whole different game.
Yeah. But anyway, folks, go watch that video. It's informative, and I agree with the heart of the video. I don't necessarily agree with the specifics, but I also don't think this person, when they made the video, was like too hammered down on specifics. But
it was well thought through, and I think he had a lot more to say, and chose to not make it long-winded smartly. But chose to fit it in within like 16 minutes, which like is long, but like he probably should have left the whole WoCG Guilty Gear thing out in general. I think people were too focused on it, and it's a distraction. Yeah. I mean, I could talk about that part all day too. It's not.
So watch it, have an opinion on it. Come back to Street Fighter V with new eyes, because something that I think is important that he brings up in this video is that at high level play, this game actually requires you to be on fucking point 100% of the time. You cannot falter for a second. What did you think about the point he made? Because we agreed with this. The last thing I'll say, he said playing Street Fighter V will make you better at older Street Fighters, but playing older Street Fighters doesn't really make you better at Street Fighter V. And my group, who we play old Street Fighters every week, we agreed with that. Yeah. I agree with that. In the level of which I agree at that is that I feel like there's like a scale. There's a line graph of, if you are just starting fighting games, playing Street Fighter V will not make you better at older fighting games. No. In fact, it'll probably make you worse. It will probably make you worse. Exactly. That's my new player rant. It gives you bad habits, but yeah, go on. If you play Street Fighter V for long enough to have like decent execution, or maybe you're coming from an older fighting game where that required execution, and you have perspective on how to approach the game itself, and you start playing the high level meta of Street Fighter V, then yes, it does. But that's like that graph. That's like my only qualification of that of agreeing with that statement is that like no, but then yes, absolutely.
What once you're playing at a level that you can get something out of it. Yeah. I have a lot of trouble going back and forth between them. We don't play a lot of modern games at my nights. I've got linked LCDs, the BenQs, the Capcom, whatever they are, the one with the HDMI pass through, and we put modern games on it. We'll play 4 sometimes, play 5 sometimes. We'll play Guilty Gear, Koihime Enbeu, whatever, right? If I go back and forth between Third Strike and 5, I mean, it takes me at least 3 or 4 matches to like get my sea legs back. Like the two just are so different. I have trouble transitioning.
All right. Well,
all right. Where are you going from here?
Well, that's, you know what? We're kind of running up against it. Okay. So I'm going to sunset this episode. And well, first I want to thank you for at very short notice coming on to talk about old games.
No problem.
This has been a pleasure. It's like a good throwback to talk about old fun stuff and to just go recommend like playing old games. It's good. Or looking at old arcade culture. That stuff's fun to think about.
I don't have a sense for how much people care about this stuff. I really don't. But
I don't know.
But I will say this:
probably not great, honestly.
I will say this: if you're listening after all of this rambling that we have done, and you have any questions about old arcade hardware, any of that stuff, I will go back on my Twitter. I will read my mentions.
I think you have an email listed on your Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's fine. You can reach me. You can reach me. I'm happy to. My DMs are open. I may or may not see it immediately, but if you leave me a message, I promise I will look at it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, before you go, I have to ask you the question that I ask every guest on their first time on the show. It's one of my favorite questions to ask people because I feel like it says a lot about someone's character in the way that they answer this question. It's a 2-parter. But first part of the question, what is your favorite normal attack in any fighting game?
So I've got a 2-part answer to like really show what a scumbag I am.
That's fine.
Okay. Because they're both scumbag moves. So my first one, I mean, if you really said you can't have 2, you got to pick one. It was Dudley's Crab Punch. And if you don't know it, or you may know it from Smug, that's when he reaches down with both his boxing gloves and like scoops you, right? I'd never played Dudley much in 4. I know him from Third Strike. And in Third Strike, it's a sweep. And it's +1 on block. Like, it's a +1 on block sweep. And if he hits you with it, he juggles you into the air and can just pound you mercilessly with a whole string of nasty combos. In fact, if he gets you in the corner, I'm not good at the corner juggles with it. Mm-hmm. I think against Chun, he can do it like 5 or 6 times in a row. I forget which character it is.
It's a 6 juggle on Chun.
Yeah, it's great.
And that requires like precise timing. You can't just mash.
Yeah, I'm not good at it. But that is the kind of thing where like I would be motivated enough to actually get that lab time in, just because it's just like so salt inducing to somebody to just get thrown up like that. And it's called a crab punch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a godlike name.
I do want to read out loud your notes here verbatim because I think this is also important to it. Crab, punch, bitch, +1 on block, juggles, looks sick. You can't beat it.
Yeah, there's a period. Crab, punch, bitch.
Yeah, the punctuation is important there. I feel like it gets the sentiment across, I believe.
Yeah. So for my part 2, I think this was yesterday. So I've been off Twitter, right? So my friend Javits texts me a screenshot of his Twitter feed, and his tweet said something like, "Would you kick a dog to get a buff?" Right?
No. The answer is no.
So I text him back. Wait, I'll pull up my text message. What exactly did I say? All right, I said, so how bad would I have to hurt this dog to get Laura's season 1 medium kickback?
Yeah,
because
was a good medium kick.
The move wasn't even as good as people thought it was. It was good. Don't get me. It was a good move. I'm not trying to downplay it, but I think people were lazy about figuring out how to deal with it. But it was a really good move.
Which is true in a lot of sense in 5. But but go ahead.
Yeah. But just bullying people with that kick. And I think about IDOM against Punk at, what was that? Defend the North, maybe? IDOM beat Punk in grand finals, I think, like one round, just smashing medium kick, and like Punk just refused to deal with it, just kept getting hit by it.
Sounds counter hit, because it moved her forward too. It's like the whole thing.
Yeah. So by the way, Javits said doesn't have to be a kick to the head. That's pure evil. Like one good kick to the side or back legs, and you get +1 elbow back from season 2. Standing medium kick and hard punch elbow becomes invincible. But that's my beef. When you do her hard punch elbow, which is, her air knockdown, it can be stuffed too easily. And like when that thing trades in the air, like a kitten dies. It's so sad. So yeah, man, like I'm a cat. I've got 2 cats. I'm not even a dog person. Like for all that, I'd kick the dog.
I'm shaking my head so hard.
He said, dogs are good. They're forgiving and love you no matter what. It's a win-win, I think.
I'm cuddling Brick extra hard tonight. You best believe.
Look,
You're not allowed near my dog. You're not allowed.
The dog would say, that's a really good buff human. Like, I understand.
No. Unforgivable. Unforgivable right. is your answer, and paints your character you're unredeemable.
I asked for Laura's standing medium kick back. I think we've established that's a scumbag thing to ask for.
That's, you know what? Fair. That's fair. All right. Part 2 of the question, which leads in from part 1. But what is your favorite combo in any fighting game?
So we alluded to this earlier, but my favorite combo is Yun, Ganesh, and Juggles. I know that like some people are rolling their eyes, or some people see it and they're like, Yun is broken, Third Strike's a stupid game, like whatever. I don't care. They're hype. They look sick.
Correct.
They're creative. They've got so many things. Like, are you going for the corner carry? Are you going for optimal meter gain afterwards? Are you doing the keeper and just doing this like insane, like constant punch to the head that looks like it shouldn't work? Like it's just dope to me. And I'm not a Marvel player. And in fact, I don't really like anime games. I don't like team versus games. I don't like these heavy juggle games where like you're doing shit in the air all the time. I'm a grounded like footsies player. I'm an old school Street Fighter player.
That's fun.
That's fun. And yet those Yun, Juggles, and Ganesian, like they just get me hyped. Like I love them.
Yeah, no, they are exciting because, like you said, it depends on. There's a lot of expressivity there.
There's so many things you can do with it, and there's
like you can choose where to drive depending on like what round is it. Like, are you up a round? Is it round 1? Like a round 1 Genijin combo is going to look a lot different from a round 2 Genijin combo.
Potentially.
On,
how you hit them into it. I mean, there's just so many approaches.
Yeah. Did you just activate Raw?
Yeah.
That might have happened.
Yeah. You might have backdashed, activated Raw, and then just shouldered into them anyway.
Yeah. And then there comes the lunge punch, and then there it is. Like that's the ticket right there.
Yeah. So I put that YouTube link in there under it in the notes. That is Eris, Avoid the Puddle Eris, talking shit, but like in an admiring way.
Was it
about Ganesh?
I think I remember that this.
This is new. This is the recent one. This is from
him talking about this year.
This is this year's Co-op Cup, and he's basically like, this is so broken. I love it.
I'll actually have to watch that because I think I remember him saying something about it last year. Like I think he went on a rant of Genijin Juggles last year.
There's a lot to rant about, but the beauty of Third Strike that Eris recognizes, he's like, man, like this is broken. It's like, wait, the guy he's playing is doing broken. Like everybody's broken. Like, and that's when everybody's broken, you're probably playing the right game. That's my closing statement.
I'm with you on. No, you know what? That's where I super agree with you. And I have said this time and again, but broken shit is hype as fuck.
Yeah.
It is, because then it brings in that extra element of what if you beat the broken shit? What if you find something? What if you find an element that is broken in a different way? What if you do an Iron Man Infinite 3 times in a row and cause your opponent to rage quit? These are just things that could potentially happen.
Yeah. And you know what Third Strike has? Third Strike has the brokenness, but unlike Marvel and all these other broken games, it also gives you an answer, because the parry is mostly a universal key.
Yeah.
If you pull it off right. Every single match that you lost, there was probably a way you could have won.
Yeah, and your ability to see that escape in your mind's eye of, well, obviously I could have parried there, or I could have attempted a red parry in this situation, or like those are the things that are like you can think about the answer, and you don't even have to think too hard. Sometimes you can just think about it and say, well, obviously that's the answer. And
it's not just the
current games. I feel like the answer is not as obvious. I feel like Street Fighter V is not an obvious game. Or
the answer might have been, well, you guessed heads and you should have guessed tails.
Sure.
And that's not fun. The beauty of a game like Third Strike, and this is my last plea to people to play it, is it has what in my mind is the sign of a good fighting game. And that is, if you have a 1st to 10 with 2 good players, does the first match look entirely different from the last match? Because if you have enough tools to evolve and change your play, there's an interesting game there. And when I see a 1st to 5 in Street Fighter V, it's, whether it's, Daigo and Takedo or whoever, it's not like these aren't great players. It's not like they're not making adjustments. It's not like there aren't mind games. Like, I see all of that. But the way Daigo played Guile in the first match and the way he played Guile in the last match, it's basically the same Guile.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it, and I think that currently we're in a good position for the future of fighting games. I think a little bit of changes to the current games, and there's so many good games right now. We're in the heyday of fighting games. Everything is good.
I don't know, man. You can't end it that way, because my response to you is, are we?
So I don't know. The whole thing is like, this is a whole other huge conversation in terms of have fighting games really ever had it? Is the community even that accessible? And the answer is kind of no. But at the same time, there's a lot of good fighting games. The games are good. It's not like 2009, dude. We're not playing Biohazard. What the fuck? We're playing good fighting games. The Smash is good. Yeah. Is Smash good? I don't fucking know.
I don't know either.
Anyway, folks, one last thing I want to send out your way. Go head on over to www.playthirdstrike.com. That's where you get all of your Third Strike answers, and it's got everything you need in terms of how to play the game. Ways like the best way to pick up the game, where to find matches. And that's definitely the website you want to go to.
I'm also remiss, because I really wanted to give a shout out to this earlier. Check out the Jazzy Circuit on Twitter, and shout out to those guys. The best American Third Strike tournament scene that's happening right now, and I think the finals is coming up at Frosty Faustings in a week, something like that.
Yeah.
So check that out. There is a living Third Strike scene in the United States. People are playing. It is still active. It is still alive. And the Jazzy Circuit is, the place to be. It's on Smash GG. It's got all the, modern stuff, and it's important. And Mutant XP is running that, and shout out to him.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Again, Aurich, thank you for your time. Again,
my pleasure.
This has been a great conversation. I've just enjoyed myself talking about old games. I will never not enjoy times like that.
And sometime I'll tell you the story about the Big Lebowski pinball.
I do not have time tonight to hear the story, but the next time I talk to you, I'm not going to look it up specifically because I want to hear the lore. Like I want to hear it passed down because
you can't look up the details I have. It doesn't exist anywhere else.
Really? Oh fuck! Actual lore. God damn it. Okay.
I am like the man in the room with like there are like 4 other people who can tell you something.
I can't. I have to shut off this podcast. I have to hit stop and I have to go say hello to my wife. All right. Anyway, folks, this has been a show. Thank you again for joining us.
Play Third Strike. It's a good game.
An episode of RSF Radio. You can find Aurich at Aurich on Twitter, or otherwise, I'm sure you can find me at Super Joe Monday or at Reddit SF on Twitter, or if you just hop on our Street Fighter and find Joe_Monday, that's me. Check it out. I guess review podcast. People do that. It's a thing that people say. Do that, I guess. Anyway, that's Joe. We'll see you next week I'm looking forward to next week's conversation. I have a guest coming next week. This is the one that I was warning people about, and then my computer broke and then things didn't happen. So don't worry about all that, folks. We'll see you guys next week on another edition of RSF Radio. But until then, take care.